There's no music in the episode today. This is a silent episode. Some of our usual guests, like Sean, weren't able to make it. This is episode 8. It's titled, Like Frivolity. Now, you're not supposed to know this, but all of the titles make a long-form poem. Oh, don't ruin it. God damn it. This is our guest. His name is Mr. Tim Waters. Kind, friendly gentleman here. Here's how you contact us. Don't worry about this shit. We're not actually taking notes. Hey, welcome back to the show. Thank you very much for watching. My name is Andy Epler. I'm the host of this show. Are we going to turn our lights on?
We could.
Should we? There are lights.
Wow.
I know a lot of people out there were trying to send notes about like, hey, they should have microphones. They should like treat it like a TV show. And I finally took a note. So here we are with lights and microphones. Hopefully, the people that have been complaining or whatever out there, apparently there were some, hopefully they're satiated. Good for you. How do we start the show? Oh, of course. This show comes on very late in Longmont, Colorado. So we always like to start the show by telling Grandma, Grandma, wake up. Are you there? I'm going to yell. Don't be worried. Grandma! Wake up! Okay. Hey, whoa, it's okay. This is just me. You all right? It's time to go to bed. You left the TV on. Are you taking your medicine? I'm going to check in with you next week, Grandma. It's good to see you. Go to bed. We hate to offend people. We try to let them know this time to stop watching the show. I was actually studying some shit this week, and I know that sometimes we have very heavy content in these monologues, right? All this like democratic socialist activism kind of stuff, right? Typical for this show. I'm going to try to bring you some happy, interesting news for this monologue, okay? I found sort of like a little fact-lit in the world. Yeah, I think it's funny. Ready? You've heard of the Heimlich maneuver? Of course. Everyone's heard of the Heimlich maneuver. It's like, it's that maneuver. Did you know, and maybe you did, but I didn't, the Heimlich maneuver was only invented in 1974. The scientist people would say it was described. Thank you. Thank you, mystery audience member who doesn't want his name associated with the show. That's our friend Scott. 1974 was the first time Dr. Heimlich, of course, described the Heimlich maneuver. You believe that? It seems so strangely recent, right? 1974, nobody knew about the Heimlich maneuver until 1974. Like, this guy, Dr. Heimlich, only died in 2016. To like put that in perspective, Dr. Heimlich could maybe have seen that Fantastic Four movie that came out in 2016. You know what I'm saying? That's how recent this happened. It's like Freud writing his books in the 80s. Like, what the fuck are you talking about? That doesn't sound right, you know? It's true, though. He came up with it in 1974. What were they doing in, like, 1971? I could ask both the people in my room here today, and maybe we'll get to it in the interview. I hope not. I hope we have other things to talk about. What were they doing in 1971 before the Heimlich maneuver when somebody was choking? They were like, oh, my friend, oh my God, my friend is choking. You know, get the leeches, you know, call the barber, right? You know? They were like, oh, start the bloodletting. My friend is being attacked by an evil spirit. Which one of you women in town is doing this? You know? What were we doing before then? Would you be burnt at the stake if you gave someone the Heimlich maneuver? Would you be thought a witch? You know? It's a strange question. Can you imagine, like, the first time that Heimlich did the Heimlich maneuver? You know what I mean? It was in 1974, right? So, like, maybe, like, he and his friends are at the bar, right? And one of their friends, what were you, like, drinking, I don't know, Coors in 1974? Eating peanuts, ? Peanuts, maybe at the bar in 1974? Maybe so. That's what I would guess. So, like, well, somebody's eating a peanut. Oh, they start choking. And fucking Heimlich, you know, walks over very confidently to the guy and just like, saves his life. The whole crowd starting to calm down after a little bit. And when tensions had settled a bit, somebody turns to Heimlich and they go, wow, Heimlich, you know, what was that little maneuver, right? And Heimlich's sitting there like, whatever, that's just some thing I made up. Who cares? I don't even care. It's 1974. I'm just minding my own business. You know, I'm trying to like boogie down or like a brick house, or like, don't be such a fry, right? It's 1974, right? But the guy's like, oh, Heimlich, oh my God, you're the man. This is me doing quotes. Oh, Heimlich, you're the man. I'll never forget where I was today when I saw the Heimlich maneuver the very first time. Oh, just like I'll remember Nixon resigning, which happened this year. That's how recently this story happened, 1974. Oh my God, I'll never forget, Can you believe that, like, in this story, if the guys are in the bar and one of the guys starts choking, but like Batman from TV and like Dr. Spock from TV are in that room, Dr. Heimlich is still the guy most likely to save the choking person's life. Because Batman didn't know the Heimlich maneuver. In Batman 66, bang, pow, and shit, if somebody starts choking on a peanut, helpless. He doesn't know the Heimlich maneuver. It's very strange to me, And Heimlich's just like, whatever, I don't even care. I'm just going to go get in my, my Pontiac Firebird Trans Am. Why don't you guys take a chill pill? It's 1974. Catch you on the flip side. Stop dipping in my Kool-Aid. Psych. Later days, Those are all the things they used to say in 1974, apparently. I'm trying to whip through this monologue because we have very little time available to us today. This episode, oh my God, we shan't rush through this. This episode is very important because it's brought to you by our friends at Abbott and Wallace Distilling. You're saying, my God, how does he keep talking about politics and local Longmont and find it interesting? Well, my friends, meet the canned cocktail. This is called the Caribbean Queen. This is called the Gina Tonic. I recommend both, of course. Wouldn't it be funny if there was one that I was like, this one's bullshit. This one of our sponsors, we can't put this swill down. None of that's going to happen, of course. Very safe here. We have good products. This is the Amaro Spritz. Isn't it beautiful? It's a beautiful little bitter orange vibe. These guys at Abbott and Wallace, you go to abbottandwallace.com to find out more information. But they're a whiskey and rum distillery. They're good friends, great community members. They put on lots of community projects, and they do like, they'll have like barrel races outside their place. Very family-friendly kind of focused place. Our friends, whiskey and rum, canned cocktails, old-fashioned. Have you ever had an old-fashioned that you really fell in love with? Did you know something about the old-fashioned? Oh, my God, I'm such a historian in this episode. Okay, I'm telling you a quick note about the old-fashioned. I don't give a fuck what we're doing. We're talking about this very quickly. All right. The old-fashioned is actually the first published recipe for a cocktail. Did you know that? It was the first published recipe. It was sort of interesting. I learned that at Abbott and Wallace from one of the bartenders because that person was very wise and had a bunch of information about drinking. And I love drinking, as do all of us in this show, of course. 350 Terry Street, 720-545-2017. That's how you get a hold of Abbott and Wallace. Boom. That was 10 minutes. I made it through. I kicked real dicks in on that monologue. That was like a race. We got through it. Are you impressed? Not for nothing. I'm a little impressed. I feel really good about it, and I appreciate you being here. Today's episode, we're going to be interviewing someone running for mayor. Did you know that there is a mayoral election happening in Longmont? You probably didn't. If you live in Longmont, there's a really good chance you didn't. That's why we're doing this show. We're trying to show you the politicians and sort of like show you that they're just normal people trying to help our community like any of us. So today we're talking to Mr. Tim Waters. And I'll invite you up now, Tim, if you'd like to join me, sir. Wonderful community member. Thank you, sir, for coming on.
Thank you for the invitation.
It's a great pleasure. Now, I may call you Tim, right?
You may.
I just wanted to say that on the show here. I don't want people to assume.
That's that's my name. I typically respond.
That's really fair.
Yeah.
Well, I love to call people by their names. I find it to be the most respectful way to refer to them. I don't know if you saw the third episode of this show when I interviewed the current mayor, Brian Bagley. May his Star Wars franchise die a fiery death. That interview started out with, we were just talking about the job of mayor. You're currently a city council person.
I am.
And well-liked enough to run for mayor. You've done a good enough job.
You don't have to be well-liked to run for mayor. You have to be well-liked to get elected mayor, I think.
So that is kind of part of my question. part of what we discovered when we talked to the current mayor was that, like, that job is tough, of course. And first of all, we want to thank you for the work you've already done in our community. Whether you agree with these people or not that are helping run our community, it's a tough, shitty job. It pays like shit, and a lot of people hate you without knowing anything about you based on some patch, whatever they perceive on your arm. So thank you for being in our community. Why do you, when you watch that interview with Brian, and he's talking about, like, oh God, this job is really tough, and like half the people automatically hate you for political reasons and whatnot. Why did you watch that and go, I want this job?
Well, I had made the decision to run for mayor before watching the interview, and I did watch the interview.
Yeah.
I've watched
you.
several of your shows.
Thank you very much, and I apologize.
It's public access television. It's,
is it
It's
ever?
kind of the Wild West. So, so yeah, I made the decision, but I didn't have to watch the interview. I get a chance to watch the mayor and listen to the interactions every Tuesday night.
Right.
So is the question, why would I do this?
Yeah.
Why would I seek the office?
Yes. What is attractive about this job to you?
Well, it's not generally what happens on Tuesday nights that's attractive. That's part of the deal, right?
Right,
Is
sure.
what you do with both other council members and the staff and the public on Tuesday nights. It's what happens the other 6 days of the week that makes the job, I think, both interesting and in some ways kind of gratifying. If you feel like you can somehow make a positive contribution to solving a problem or moving the dial on something. So I think it's probably been more challenging for any elected official, probably mayors more than city council members, because there is some responsibility that the mayor carries that I don't as a representative of Ward 1. Because of the pandemic, we've all experienced something that none of us have ever experienced before.
Right.
And we're in a moment unlike any of us alive have experienced. I suppose folks 100 years ago, 100 and some years ago, who found themselves trying to come out of the influenza, the Spanish flu pandemic, might have been mindful that, gee, it was a unique time in their history. But none of us, there's no roadmap, there's no blueprint, there's no game plan for getting from where we are to whatever the new normal's going to be.
Right.
And what the pace of that's going to be, what the focus of that should be. There's no direction. You're going to make it up as you go along. And personally, it's, I think, both opportunities and enormous challenges. It's kind of like, if you think about cartographers, where they, before they really knew about the new world, you had maps. And then they had charts, not maps, they had charts.
And a lot of people died to make those charts.
Well, and on the charts, it was like, over there be dragons, don't go there.
Right.
Because people went there and they never came back. They're not certain why.
Yeah.
But there was no direct route to get from the old world to the new world. And in some ways, I think it's not unlike that in terms of what the new normal is going to be coming out of this pandemic.
No, I like your analogy.
Yeah.
I appreciate that. I think here's a question that a normal person might have that doesn't know much about our city structure or politics. You're already a city council person, and you did that for a full term, of course. Here we are at the end of it. What makes you not run for that seat again? What do you perceive is better about being mayor? What can you do as mayor that you couldn't do as city council person?
Well, for the record, I'm in the middle of a term.
Oh,
so I was elected to a second term in 2019.
Okay.
So I've got 2 years left.
Oh, okay.
So if I fail in this pursuit, I have 2 more years on the council.
Oh, okay. I didn't even understand that. Okay, so you're still going to have.
But it's still a fair question.
Yes.
I'm going to have a seat on the council. But why you would pursue this?
Yes.
There really are 3 reasons, I think. One is the city, the mayor has a little more influence on an agenda. What shows up on Tuesday nights, the mayor has more influence on that agenda than I do. I can come on a Tuesday night and I can make a motion to direct staff to bring something, to put something on an agenda. If I get 3 other votes, the staff is obligated to do that. The mayor works with the city manager on a regular basis, so what shows up on the agenda at times reflects that conversation, not necessarily what happened with a motion on a Tuesday night, number 1. Number 2,
great reason.
as the highest elected official in this municipality, it's a weak mayor system, Brian talked about that. So the mayor doesn't have a whole lot of authority, but the mayor does have some moral authority beyond what the charter says and the legitimate authority that a mayor has.
You mean like you represent the town in a different way?
Yeah.
Because you're an elected official.
And as the mayor, there's some credibility, some, I don't know, moral authority, some authority that goes with that role as a convener, as someone who might extend an invitation to which people would respond across segments of the community to address a need or a potential solution to a problem, that they're not going to respond, unless it's a personal relationship and we're going to have coffee. But coming out of the pandemic, I could start to name issues, and I will if you want to, where I do think whoever sits in the mayor's role, whether it's me or one of the other candidates, is going to have both an opportunity and a responsibility to convene people to say, we've got to solve this problem, we've got to do it in a timely way, and let's move in that direction with some clarity and some vision and some pace, right, if we're going to recover.
Well, you have a good reputation as a focused community servant, for sure, that's true. Who's running against you for mayor?
A current sitting council member by the name of Joan Peck, and a gentleman who I've not met by the name of Gregory Harris. Those are the three candidates.
So what would you say is the defining difference that you have with, say, Joan Peck, who is the other option, one of the other options?
Yeah.
What does she believe?
I'm going to let you interview her.
But show me the difference.
Well, I think, so I don't want to sit here and characterize Joan, but
excuse me from that. What I am asking is, I would like to know what the difference is.
Well, so let me just talk about me rather than them, right?
Sure.
So what I think are differentiators between me and other candidates.
Also built into my question is, I'm also trying to see if you know what the other candidates think.
I do know what the other candidates think. So I could pick off issues like this, right? So we set a goal a couple of years ago as a council to do more and better for our youngest residents. So it turned into a goal to do more in the space of early childhood and child care and early childhood education for reasons that have everything to do with stability of the workforce, long-term solutions to homelessness, long-term solutions to economic development. If we could get it right with residents at that age, moving forward with the generation, a whole bunch of other problems, right, never materialize because of what we know to be the beneficial effects of high-quality early childhood experiences.
Okay.
Based on what I've read, we see the range of solutions, I think, very differently, right, in terms of what needs to happen in that space.
Okay.
That would be one difference. When it comes to housing, we would both agree that we have a lot of work to do to do more and better with affordable housing and to do more and better with attainable housing, right, along this continuum.
Yeah.
Attainable housing, people create their own definitions, I guess, but housing for which working families who don't qualify for subsidized housing, but aspire to own a home, housing that they could qualify for and afford over the long run, that would be attainable housing, given their incomes and the cost of that housing. We just have very different views on what it would take, or what it's going to take going forward, to increase the likelihood, the probabilities we can see that kind of housing inventory available in the market. I think we both agree that we need a regional transportation solution. I think we would not see all the range of options to solve that regional transportation or to respond to the regional transportation need the same way. I could go on, but
okay.
I think when it just comes to, I don't know honestly where the other candidates, what their views are about growth rate, growth patterns. It's a growing narrative in the community about, gee, is growth out of control? I don't want things to change. I want them, I don't want Longmont to get bigger. Longmont's going to get bigger.
I hear a lot of kind of binary talk about that issue, as if anyone's actually fighting for zero growth. That's the language that's being thrown around a lot in this election. So-and-so wants zero growth. I don't believe that shit.
Yeah.
No, but it's a question of balance.
Yeah.
And finding a different balance is a noble conversation to have.
Absolutely. And how does it get managed? And and making certain that as we grow, that we're mindful and attentive to who's in and who's out in terms of opportunities of the community, just specifically.
Please.
To not lose sight of what we need to do in terms of creating opportunities, places, and activities for kids, right? That we don't grow ourselves into a community where all our asphalt, basketball courts, like happens in big urban centers, which would be an extreme example. But the point is to make certain that we're attending to those parts of the community as well.
Because it's a quality of life issue.
Sure it is. Sure it is.
Longmont needs that town square kind of thinking.
Yep.
In my opinion.
It
And
is.
What do I know?
Well, it's one of the.
Professional idiot.
Honestly, there's a vibe in this community
Yes.
that you don't want to lose.
That's right.
There's a level of engagement in the community. It's pretty remarkable. Having moved here, I moved to Greeley, Colorado from the metropolitan Phoenix area, right?
Okay.
And part of the reason we moved, my sons at that time, I have 2 grown sons. My sons were like in grades 3 and 6 at the time. And we just thought, the Phoenix area where I'd grown up was starting to feel more like Los Angeles. And I was looking for professional opportunities that could give me a chance to move my family to a different kind of a setting. So I was offered a job in Greeley, Colorado as superintendent of that school district, and loved living in Greeley and loved the feel of a smaller community, not a small town, but certainly smaller than the metropolitan area. We moved to Longmont, a whole set of circumstances that people have probably heard me talk too much about that brought us to Longmont. But we weren't here very long before we realized the vibe was so different even than what we experienced in Greeley. Mm-hmm. The connections across the community, the potential as the jewel of the Front Range.
Right.
I mean, there's so much to love about Longmont.
We both agree on that, of course.
Yeah. And we don't want to lose those things. That said, the master plan, Envision Longmont, kind of projects growth in Longmont to take us to 116,000 residents.
Okay.
And the Envision Longmont suggests that we ought to have more density, higher density residential opportunities along our business corridors. Not everywhere, but along our business corridors. So depending on what happens with that density, and the only way you're going to get it is by going up, by going vertical. Maybe you get to 125,000, but the fact of the matter is that there's just not going to be enough greenfield or brownfield kind of redevelopment to get much beyond that, right? So if you understand that especially given wildfires in the west and hurricanes and flooding in the east, we're going to have a lot of climate refugees in this country,
yes.
to say nothing of the people on the move around the world, given what's happened with climate and conflict. So the prospect that people are going to stop coming to Colorado is not very likely, right? So the question is, how do you manage that in a way that keeps the vibe, keeps the connection, keeps the feel of Longmont? Nobody wants to lose that.
That's right. Now, let me ask you a related question. Wow, what a great interviewer. I don't want to lose what makes Longmont special either, right? Our culture,
Yeah.
so to speak, for lack of a better term. It's my opinion that one of the main engines of culture is the arts. And it is also my opinion that artists in this town are under a unique circumstance of having to pay outrageous amounts for rent.
Yeah.
So like my worry, of course, I've been here since 2009, and I've seen rent more than double.
Yeah.
And quality not change.
Yeah.
Rent double. Wages not double.
Yeah.
Right? So what would you say to someone who is having trouble paying their rent, even working a few jobs, but they're in the arts? If they go away, Longmont will not have anything to boast about except a nice view.
Yeah. So in this narrative about growth, one of the criticisms is the number of housing units that would be multifamily units, whether they're apartments or condos. Like one of the terms, I guess the pejorative term I've read is they're like beehives of activity. These apartments. Well, those are the housing units that a lot of young families or young professionals on the rise are going to be in. My wife and I, this was a long time ago, right? When you weren't even a gleam in anybody's eye, right?
I barely am anyway now.
That's how a lot of us start, right?
Yeah.
And so today, what we see in Longmont is the type of housing that's still trying to catch up with honestly a 20-year year-over-year decline in housing starts from 2001 to 2011. If you just look at housing permits during that period of time, it declined every year for 20 years. Now you hit the Great Recession, 2008 and 9,
Right.
and nothing gets built, right?
Right.
So that didn't just happen here. That happened across the country, but it did happen here.
It facilitated me moving because everything was ruined.
So we're still trying to catch up, right? So there was an interesting study not long ago that reported, not just in Colorado, but in states across the country, how many housing units would have to be added to the housing inventory just to catch up from what happened in 2008 and 9. That number is 275,000 over a 5-year period of time in Colorado. That's 55,000 units a year. Some of that applies to Longmont,
Yeah.
right?
Right.
So in order for us to house a young population, or whether it's young artists or any working class
Yeah,
family,
single parent, whatever.
you've got to have a better mix of housing options than we've had available in Longmont. A part of the reason we didn't have condos, my wife and I, first home we bought, and for a lot of families, is a condo, multi-unit. You know, they're small and they're affordable or attainable. They were underbuilt for years because of a construction defect law that the state legislature created, right?
Oh.
So in a condo unit, a developer builds a condo unit. If there's a flaw somewhere, right, a plumbing issue or some structural issue in one unit, there would be liabilities for whatever that problem is in every unit in the condo, if I understand what the implications were. But it had a chilling effect on developers and builders of multifamily housing units, right? Because of the construction defect law. So that got changed last year, not this session, 2 sessions ago in the legislature, which is one of the reasons we're starting to see condos back as part of proposed projects.
That makes sense.
And part of the housing inventory.
Yes.
So it doesn't happen overnight. People have heard me say this. It is a real frustration for me, and not just for me, for anybody who's interested, whether you're building a home or you want to buy a home. There are certain things that add up to the cost, right? Ground, infrastructure, building materials, and labor. The other big cost in Longmont is how long it takes us to get projects approved. And we have great staff, but we have a process that I think needs serious attention to shorten the time frame to approve what are good projects. I'm not suggesting approving bad projects.
Yeah, of course.
But for every day a project gets hung up in our approval process, it adds cost to you, not to the developer.
Right.
It's to whoever the end user is going to be.
That's who always gets stuck with this kind of bill, you know what I mean?
Yep. We've got other fees, we've got utilities, and the cost of all that stuff continues to go up. We're going to see new building codes recommended to the council here pretty soon. There are several of those building codes that make sense. New homes being constructed, the code will require that it's an easy hookup for somebody who wants to have a solar display, right?
That makes sense.
It sure does. There's going to be a required charging station.
That
right?
makes sense.
For automobiles, it sure does.
It's for the future.
Absolutely. Both of those increase, right off the top, add the cost of the home. You can't do it without adding cost to a home. So the only way to offset
that ain't why these houses cost so
No.
goddamn much
But my
anyway.
point is, one of the ways to offset that cost is to reduce the amount of time it takes, because we are clear on code and we set clear objectives for what we want to get accomplished without compromising our environment, without repeating mistakes from the past that we saw along the river, for example.
Yes.
I think we can do both of those things and increase the likelihood that young, whether they're artists or any other occupation, has a place to live and grow and grow old in Longmont.
I appreciate that in-depth answer. I think I appreciate your ideas. I think we're running just almost out of time. I know you have a meeting here in a little while. Thank you for coming on. One more question, if I may.
Yeah.
You are running for mayor in an historic time.
Yep.
You are going to face things that other mayors that have been, if you win, of course,
Yeah.
you and on city council, of course, you're going to keep facing new things that no one has had to deal with.
Yep.
What scares you the most about that? And if it doesn't scare you, goddamn, we need to know that. That's terrifying.
The coming out of the pandemic, there are going to be communities. So here's the metaphor, right? That are sometimes it feels like right now we're in a cul-de-sac, and we keep circling the cul-de-sac because we can't get clear on what we're trying to accomplish or the direction in which we want to move. It feels that way today at times.
Yes, I understand.
Coming out of the pandemic, there are going to be some extraordinary opportunities. There are going to be huge challenges that go along with that. And I'll just give you one example. I mentioned childcare earlier. Unless we can envision what the new normal is for childcare, the whole childcare industry, it's an industry that was crushed by the pandemic. It was already one of the reasons that we can't have the kind of workforce of all the moms and dads who have kids who need care.
Yeah.
Oftentimes can't be in the workforce because of access and cost, right? If you could solve that, you could have a workforce where there's way more commitment long-term.
Of course.
In opportunities that come along. But that's going to require envisioning a whole new normal. We can't take what we've done with this in the past and think it's going to look the same going forward.
That's true.
It will cripple us if we do that, right?
Well said.
Same thing is true for housing. Same thing is true for the kind of economic development we need to do.
We need new answers.
So to get us out of the cul-de-sac is going to require a different kind of leadership, I think, than we've ever needed before, right? In municipal elections, and I know people say this every time there's an election. This is the most important election of our time, right?
Yeah, that's what they say.
Yeah,
and
I know.
It's often true because these things compound.
Well, what's different in this election cycle is recovery from the pandemic.
And
so
recognizing that the pandemic's not over.
It's not over, right? But if those communities that can come together with a vision, some clarity, and some leadership to get out of the cul-de-sacs they're going to be in, and move their communities in a direction, will differentiate themselves. I don't want to put in the category of winners and losers, but they'll differentiate themselves from other communities with more housing, with the kind of housing stock, the kind of professional opportunities, the kind of stability with the workforce, the kind of amenities that you'd like to see in a community, which might take us back to artists and artistry in Longmont and the venues in which you do or do not have a chance to demonstrate or perform, right?
Yeah. It's a unique, weird job. I have another episode where we'll go into depth about that. Thank you very much for coming on the show. What do you consider, I'll ask you one last question.
Yeah. I'll try to give you a short answer.
Well, geez, I'm here to listen to you, Tim. I appreciate you coming on, man. What kind of politician do you admire more? The kind of politician that sticks to their guns because they've done their research and they have made their decision about it? Or are you of the mind that one of the most noble things a politician can do is change their mind when given new evidence?
Yeah, I don't think that's an either or.
To me it is, because it seems like when I was growing up, I watched elections where one of the main slams was, he's a flip-flopper. Motherfucker changes his mind when he comes across a better idea. Like it was some kind of terrible slap in the face. And like the noble thing for a politician to do would be stick to their idea no matter what. Do you have an opinion on the difference there?
Yeah, well, I think I understand the difference, right? I think it's a false dichotomy in some ways.
Fair enough. How do you mean?
Well, I think someone who is unwilling to learn is in the wrong job.
Nice. That's encouraging.
Yeah, and
yes.
One of the things that's most frustrating to me, I spent I spent 44 plus years as an educator. The last 21 others I ran an education research and development company. We exhausted ourselves working with policymakers and leaders to say, let's suffuse your decision making with research, right? Before you craft a policy, why don't you ask a question, what's the evidence here, right? Yeah. And it ought to be the evidence that causes you to arrive at a conclusion, and sometimes it's different than where you started.
Yes, of
right?
course. Yes.
So to stick to your guns in the face of overwhelming evidence that where you're standing is the wrong place.
Not a noble thing to do.
It's not noble, right?
I'm glad, Tim. I really agree with you there.
Now, let me just say that. Once having done that, for me, the question I ask frequently as a council member is, what's the evidence? What are we trying to accomplish? You know, is this the solution? What's the evidence that this is the right solution to the problem? How will we know? What are the unintended consequences? How are we going to evaluate the effects of what we've done? What are we going to learn? How we need to learn our way forward on this? What are we going to do with what we've learned? Are we willing to learn what we need to, right, to craft the most informed possible decision? And then let's evaluate as we go along. That's that's the world in which I lived before retiring and ended up becoming an elected official, right? So once having done that, I've also seen elected officials. You've used the term politician. I just don't think of myself as a politician, but
fair enough.
Maybe I am. But I'm certainly an elected official.
It's not supposed
right?
to be a slam,
I get it.
But obviously, often, it's a fucking
slam. I've seen I've seen people, not just elected officials, from all walks of life, take a position in spite of the evidence to say, this is where I'm going to stand.
Yep.
Which wouldn't be smart.
No, but if you're a narcissist or a sociopath, you want to be in politics.
Well, I've also taken positions to say, I've learned what I need to learn. I think this is the right thing to do. The politics might not be great because of how stuff gets politicized today.
Right.
And I'm not going to take a step back because it's unpopular.
Sure. Good.
If I'm convinced that based on the evidence, we're in the right spot.
Evidence-based beliefs. Well, we're just a big fan of that shit on this show, my friend.
So, like I said, I don't think it's either or, but there are times I've said, this is a hill I'm willing to die on.
Good.
Right?
I appreciate you,
Yeah.
Tim. That's Tim Waters. He wants your vote. Tim, now the election day, of course, it happens in November, but the mail-in ballots is where it's really at in
Yeah.
Longmont.
Well, actually, it's all mail-in ballots. So
Is it all mail-in ballots?
The ballots, I think the ballots the ballots are supposed to arrive on October 11th.
Okay.
And people have to have them back by November 2nd.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's going to be a lot of fun. We're going to do election coverage on this show the night before and maybe the day of. We're going to live stream the results and stuff. So it'll be fun. That's Tim Waters. Tim, how do people find more about you? You got a website or something?
I do, timwatersformayor.com. I've organized my issues under two themes, recovery from the pandemic and reducing our carbon footprint. And what I think to be priority issues and opportunities are listed there. Not all the issues are opportunities for sure. I mean, there's a lot more than what's there. But in terms of what people should know, what they should expect from me in terms of my priorities, are captured, I think, there.
All right. Thank you very much for coming on the show. Thank you very much for watching the show. Or whatever. If you tuned out, we don't even want you at the end of this fucking show. We want you to just leave if you got to leave. Thank you very much for Tim coming on. Appreciate you, sir. And we'll see you again another time. Thank you.